Hey everyone, it's Mr. Clutch here. We're just after 30 minutes after close on Tuesday, June 6th. So I didn't get to make a video yesterday, so I wanted to run through and look at the action that we had today. So we'll just jump right in again and start by drawing our zones. So let's draw out some zones and see what they look like here. Um, so we go to yesterday's high, which looks like the most recent high we've had in a while. Probably would pull it down because there's not a high wick to come to the bottom of that candle. I'd probably pull it down, maybe even, yeah, that's only about 60 cents there, maybe to the top of these wicks here. So you really got kind of your area where that was showing some resistance there. And if we go take our low of day yesterday, this one does have a big wick down. So I'll put it there, maybe up to, that's a pretty big zone. I'll probably just stop it there. And then we could go back. And this one here, if you look back at this high one, if I go back a day, I could maybe, how big is that if I bring it down to that high wick from the day prior? We've got it's about $1, so, or a little under $1, not too big, but yeah, again, it's not perfect there. You can try to get more. You get too many on, and it's hard to actually even trade in it. So that leaves us a little room to look for a move out one way or the other. I can tighten it up a little there. So we'll go ahead and just because we're not looking at today's action yet. So we saw as we're in pre-market though, as we get closer to the open, we're right in between. So I'd probably have this one down here marked out too, maybe something like that there. And we could go back and find one above, but since we didn't break that, just to save time, I'll skip that today. So let's go to our 2 minute chart, or yeah, 2 minute chart here. Got our EMAs here. Let's look back at open. So pretty flat movement through pre-market. Really didn't go anywhere. You kind of mark a high right in here somewhere that we wick to, a low right in here. So we come out of the open, and it actually looks like. Where's the opening candles at? Yeah, right there. So it looks like, oh, we're getting drippy out of our zone. And to be honest, at that point, I think a lot of us had probably had a bias for down. So you're kind of watching for a pullback, and that's exactly what it does. It comes back and tests your zone here, even your 13, and it kind of holds for one candle. And you think, okay, maybe that was a nice spot there to potentially take a short off the 13 there. But then it kind of just pushes back up through. It gets your EMAs mixed back up, and we push out of it. So now we're on the high side. If you kind of look back where that pre-market high area was, we could just kind of put a line there just to keep it in mind. And so you come up here, and again, this is a really steep recovery, steep and quick. It's kind of one of those ones that I talk about where I don't really like playing the V's out of these because they happen so fast, but I mean, you could have had a buy set at the 13 there, and that'd have been a nice little scalp. So as this comes back up and it's kind of riding that line, that high, it's actually, pushed through, would drop back down, and it's just going back and forth on it. I would probably be drawing out a line right, like something like this. That closed through it, and so you might be thinking, okay, this is it. But some of these, like I always try to remind myself in the middle of the day, like if we're this close and it's this choppy, like just wait on that 13. It comes more times than not. I feel like I don't, have any official way to know how many times we come into that 13, but yeah, you could take a spot there. It's not, it's not the greatest because you still think, okay, we are just getting smashed here. But what you could do is draw what we talk about, the horizontal line at this point, because these are pretty. As this starts pushing up through here and just breaking, you can get in right here. Your best entry down here, pushing up off of it, and it's kind of set. At this point, it's kind of decided, okay, we're on top of the pre-market high. You could still have a pretty tight stop here under the 13 and the pre-market high. So you could take an entry somewhere down here, but if you need a little more confirmation up here. So, and then you kind of ride that up. You probably get a trailing stop hit somewhere here. and it looks like it's holding 13 here. So you're thinking maybe you get some follow through. In hindsight, we now know this is the high of the day, so you weren't going to get any follow through. But looking back at it, we hold the 13 here again. Just set a buy on the 13. You could have had a nice little move there. So again, I don't like to play these steep flags here. So usually I'll wait till it comes back up and then comes back a second time. So you could draw that out right there. And we'll get to that over there. On the other side, just drawing trend lines. Let's see what this one looks like. If you kind of had something up through here. Again, our EMAs are completely backwards for our 2-minute strategy, so it's not something we would necessarily. Let's actually, potentially. Just make sure I get those lined up right. Hitting there. So it'd be somewhere in here. You might even be on the high side of a. Yeah, so you could watch this come in here. And it breaks down, but it kind of held on top of the 13, so you're not short in there. But as soon as this kind of starts breaking here, we're pushing off the 13. You could potentially take a short there. Again, this is not 2-minute because you're coming back into the pre-market high. This is all hindsight. So that's not a move probably I'd take in the day, unless you were strictly just playing trend lines and trying to catch a quick move. So so I draw this line out. It comes down. Holds our zone. Talk about a risk to reward play there again. You take a position here that the zone's going to hold, put your stop a little below, and that ride that back up. But as it comes back through and it starts coming through the 13 through the trend line, I could see an entry here. And then it kind of let's see how far did it drop there? 30-cent drop. Your stop may not got hit if you had it at 20. And with the 48 being so close there, you might use that as your stop. And so you might have been okay because those are so close together. I'm fine using the 48 there. You could readjust that trend line, even tighten it up a little so it's still touching multiple points here. And then when this one comes through, you could get in and ride that back up to the high of the day again. Nothing big though, no follow through moves on that. Those are tough moves. So at this point, once we have this new point, I'd readdress this trend line, maybe something like that, somewhere in there. And so this comes over, bounces here, comes back to it, kind of walks up and pins under the 13. I don't love taking these moves. I'm going to delete our pre-market high because we've kind of been back and forth through it. So at this point, I'm not looking at it anymore. If the 200 wasn't right here and say it was down here on the zone, I would think that looked really good. You kind of walked up, almost flagged up into it out of on your trend line, and then starts breaking down. I could see a move there, back into the zone. The 200 would have me a little hesitant, but again, if you're trying to scalp something quick there, that wasn't terrible. But it's not an ideal setup. That's kind of the story of the day. There's not like a clear-cut spot where you're like, that was the play. That was the one flag that just looked beautiful, fit perfect. You're searching to try to find a good play there. So let's look at this now. So we've got, you've got this, and it's kind of just bouncing back and forth here. I'm not, maybe you try to play the breakout here and hope it follows back through. Ooh, pardon me, tired today. But you're probably just waiting all this out. And then when you get that second point, like I talk about, this is kind of your second point to be able to play that on. Look at that. This actually might have been a good move in here. So as we come back through it here, we're through the 13, we're through the 200. There's pretty high risk or low risk to high reward play you could take right here. Our zone held made a kind of like a lower or a higher low here. And here you are pushing through that. And this would have been a great play. Like, you wouldn't have got stopped out here. You'd have probably put your stop maybe right here. If you got in here, you could have probably, within a candle or two, maybe keep your stop right under here. So it comes back and tests the 200. Again, I actually think as we zoom in, this is not a bad flag to be able to take. Something like that. You might even readjust it as this candle closes red, you might kind of just over the top. And then here you're getting in somewhere, and that would have been, that's probably the best move you could have caught today with the 2 minute 427.36. Yeah, so it's about $1 move, and then this is just chopping in the rest of the day. So yeah, that was the one you be patient for. I think a lot of times, especially if you're sitting at your computer all day looking for a trade, it's just like, man, I need something. So you'll start seeing, not necessarily seeing something, something will start fitting your narrative of you taking a trade, you know. And I don't know if I can find one here, but you'll just start thinking, okay, I need to be in a trade. This looks good enough, and you'll get in, you know. So this just kind of shows that there was stuff here you could have taken, but I didn't love any of it. But then when this happened and we broke back north of the EMAs, and then we flagged back and they flipped here, that was a really good play there. So let's switch back to the 15 and go over, look at Qs real quick and try to draw some zones there. I don't know what that is. Let me delete that. Okay. So we don't see today yet, obviously. Let me clear this. I got a lot of stuff that I didn't know I had on here. Okay. So we go back here, we create our high from yesterday, and then our low from yesterday. Probably just do something like that. That's a pretty big zone there. This really wasn't respected yesterday, the high from the previous day, so there's not a lot there. I'd probably have this, obviously this one below. Could do that, and you're getting pretty big there. Okay, so let's dive into today's action now and look at it and see. I didn't even barely look at Qs today. I was on the futures chart most of the day, so I was at ES up most of the time. So we're holding our zone all the pre-market. Boom, sell right through it. This is kind of that same thing SPY did, but this actually went from on top of it to below it, so it's really looking bad here. As you're pushing back up into the 13 in the zone here, and you got these 3 wicks, would not think you were crazy for taking, even though it's kind of steep. There's something there potentially as this starts breaking down, and then you would have just got caught up in this chop and stopped out. There was no follow through on that. So now you're kind of just waiting. Let's see what this trend line looks like. I know it's kind of weird in pre-market when you have these weird candles, but if you just put something along the lines of that, yeah, it's not bad that it comes back. And so here we are, though. We're pushing back through our zone, and it looks like we're climbing here, kind of flipping the EMAs. I mean, you could take it here because it's kind of breaking here. You know, it's not perfect, but maybe you have after this little red, like this is like an inside 3-bar play here. This red candle here, you could have drawn a little, you know, trend line with these candles and that. Yeah, maybe you get in there. That's not terrible. Like I said, it kind of coincided. As you see it start breaking up through that, then you're feeling really good, and that wasn't a bad move. I don't hate that. Get in at 354, goes up to, yeah, so you got $1 there. So now we're back testing the 13. So you're probably looking for it again. This was a quick back test, so I'm kind of looking for maybe like another reset point, maybe a second back test and go. And it kind of did that, but it's just weird action. Like you got so many high wicks and it's changing colors. So at some point here, I'm probably doing that. And you know, this breaks north of it. Maybe you take a shot when it closes, but you're so far from your EMA. This is one of those ones you probably just go, You're looking. This might be a good example of what I was saying on the SPY chart. You're just looking for a trade here, you know. So you're like, well, I need to get in something, and we broke through this little area. But then let's pull this trend line that was similar to SPY, because this thing looks pretty nice if I'm looking. Actually, I want to come from that wick. Let's see if we line up our wicks here. Ooh, look at this. Yeah, I like this. So this here comes, and when it breaks down here, you're starting to think down. Even though you got your EMAs bunched up here, you're worried about not getting any follow through. I'm not saying you take it here, but you're watching it, and it sells off too quick. Like if you would have just solely played trend line breakdown here, you could have taken that and caught that, and that'd have been a nice move. But here we go again. It sells back off. Here's that similar trend line we had to spy. Now this one's a little different because it's so far from the 13 here. Maybe you do something like that. Not a perfect flag, but as it's okay. So let's see. Yeah, this isn't like our ideal like walk up, up above the 13. It comes back, tests it, breaks the flag, and goes. It's like this isn't perfect. This is messy. But what you have here is, if you want to take a chance on this, you've held the zone here. Like we went in it, held it, came back, kind of basing on top of it. As this candle is breaking north of this little flag here, you're right above the 13 and your other EMAs. So you could enter here and have such a tight stop. This is one of those low risk, high reward plays, and you get a nice move up there. So that this one would be more irrelevant here, but something like that potentially you could find a good entry. And then look at this trend line. This is what I notice a lot, and I've talked about in other videos. This trend line gets back tested here perfectly. So this is another thing. If you got this drawn out and you make high day, this isn't necessarily a terrible, like, as you wick through it and we kind of hold it and then we start breaking down, like we got an engulfing. We have to do that video on the engulfing candle where this body is overtaking the previous one. At that trend line, kind of banging off of that, and you could take it's one of those high reward, low risk trades, but not something we would trade. I just want you to see that, or on the 2 minute, we're not trading that, but just kind of see that these trend lines matter and they come back again. So let's see what else we got. So at this point, again, I'm just drawing trend lines here. This isn't something, the EMAs are the wrong way to take a short here, so you're not wanting to do that. But we do have this other point here that we probably want to draw a trend line from. What would you look at that? So as this breaks down, and it's kind of hard to like get back to the 13 here to take a short off of it, so you may have missed that. But look again, it's the same thing that happens up here. So it breaks down, actually loses zone, comes up, gets stuck on top of it, or hits the trend line again, and then kind of sells back off and bounces around a little there. So these diagonal trend lines, you'll so often see it, even the other way. When it's this way, you'll see. If we had this here, for example, let's see if something. A lot of times you'll see where you break through and it'll come back and test it here and go. So just something to watch. Let's see how we finish the day here. So kind of the same way. You potentially could have a trend line right here. Let me delete this. So if you've got, you can kind of notice here at the 200, we're kind of like rejecting it over and over and over, right? Like we get through a candle or two right here. I guess back here we maybe one or two, I guess, small ones. But you could draw out a trend line here, and if you connected from the start, if you took it and said, okay, look, we had this high, then this kind of came back through and fell off. At this point, say we're down here, you connect these two wicks here, and look what happens. You come back to it one more time, come back to it again, and now you're thinking, okay, if this thing breaks, maybe we got some room up. And we'll look where it breaks again. Right there, you got your 13 close behind. You could take this entry right here and get a nice little move up there. So, and then I would not be playing that with the EMA stacked in the last little bit of the day. So, anyways, kind of long-winded today, and there was a lot going on. Wasn't an awesome trend day. It was, you're looking for moves. But even in these days where you're looking for moves and you start getting impatient, just remember, something should show itself at some time. And if it doesn't, you don't have to trade. I mean, I need to hear that myself too. A lot of times I'm the same way. I'll be looking for something after it's been a while. But yeah, if you kind of just waited all this out and waited till something here on SPY and Qs, there was one little nice move, you could be out in some profit today. So anyways, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts, all that stuff. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Clutch Trades. And let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.